Hi, everyone. Thank you. Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us today. I spent a lot of time in the merchandise mart. In my prior life, I was editor of a Chicago design magazine for many years, so really fun to be back. We've assembled a great panel here, diverse people from those that manage offices trying to get workers back to the office to those who are designing them, architects, and representative from the real estate world. We have Eva Greene. She's Director of Client Experience for Cresset Capital. We have Kate Davis. She is Global Practice Director for Commercial Interiors at HKS Architects. We have Jason Hall, who is Creative Director of Charlie Green Studio, which does commercial interior design. Sarah Silva, she is Vice President of Tenant Representation at JLL. And Paul Tokars, he's a partner with West Point Financial Group. So I'm gonna dive right in. The big question is, what is the new work reality? And I think what we're finding, at least in Chicago, is that we have about 55% of workers are going back to the office at least 3 days a week. That number is pretty low. It's remained fairly steady for a while. But actually, Sarah told me something interesting just before. You had mentioned that if we factored in Monday and Fridays, we could have a different story.
That's exactly right. So we are seeing office attendance plateauing at 3 days a week. I think we're all hoping for it to uptick to 4, but 3 is here to stay. When you look at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which are the days most people are coming in, the office occupancy is around 68%. So 68% is actually what we were post-COVID, pre-COVID, I'm sorry. So that's a stable number, but then when you factor in Monday and Friday, that's what really drags the percentages down to 55%. That's what the news articles is, taking that story, and that's like the doom and gloom part of it. But what I think is kind of cool is that if we're coming in 3 days a week, how do we make offices worth coming to, really engaging during those 3 days, making sure we're doing, in-person meetings. Paul's company, he was mentioning that they are in 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, and really strategic around what they're doing those days that they're in the office.
Yeah, so the big question we want to answer today is how do we get workers back to the office, and does design matter when we get workers back to the office? I think you probably know that the answer already is yes, but I don't think I'm spoiling anything there. But before we dive into that, we'll talk about, we're going to touch on 5 trends that are driving the post-pandemic workplace. One is mobility. Workers want to and expect the ability to work from anywhere and the autonomy to match work with the right setting far beyond the pandemic. 2 is also privacy. Many workers already struggled to find privacy in the workplace before. Now they expect to maintain the privacy they've become accustomed to at home. 4 is a hybrid model. Hybrid work seems to be here to stay. So it's time to improve the hybrid experience at the office too. And then 5th is health and well-being, which Kate's going to talk about a bit later. Great workplaces have always supported more than just work, and now people expect health and wellness to be built into everything, including into the office. Jason, why don't you start us off with, does design matter when it comes to bringing workers back?
I was a little biased, but I'll say absolutely. And I think it actually matters now more than ever. We're talking about design with our clients in much more intensive and detailed ways because it's an engine for talent retention and attraction. So, all the things that we've been saying in the years leading up to the pandemic are it's really starting to resonate now. This idea that design really does matter. It's something that draws people in unexpected ways back to the office. We understand that we're competing with people's homes. And so, we have to think of ways of expressing the value of the office in kind of unexpected and unimagined ways.
Can you talk a little bit about, so you worked with Paul's company to redo the offices. Was it right around the middle of the pandemic, or?
So as I look at the photos, I almost wish there was a photo of what our office looked like before that, because I keep looking at, I look at that photo right there, and I keep forgetting, in a good way, what it used to look like. I think from a timing perspective, we moved in last fall, and from a timing perspective, it was perfect in terms of getting the fresh space in the post-COVID world, because what we had before. And you were at the old space, if I remember correctly, or at least your team was. I know.
Yeah, you guys never let us past reception.
Right.
So we never actually saw.
Right. No, I mean, it was a space where we wouldn't get anyone in today. We just didn't have light. We didn't have a homey feel. We had a lot of windows, but all of our exterior offices blocked 100% of all the sunlight that was coming in. So if you were like at an interior space, you had zero sunlight. Which again, in the post-COVID world would be unimaginable. So
Very hierarchical. Yeah.
exactly right. So it's from a timing perspective, it could not have had been better with the unexpected news of what COVID was going to bring to us. So thank God, from a design standpoint, the timing worked out the way it did.
So what did you tell Jason's team that you wanted, and what did?
I think it was more of them helping us understand what the new reality was, and looking at different drawing boards and understanding, just getting feels for what they have designed in different spaces. I can still remember being in our old large conference room with all these different storyboards, and all of the local Chicago key leaders, really kind of grading which ones spoke to them the most and which ones got a positive reaction and positive feel. So it wasn't necessarily us who don't have the experience in interior design. It was more of his team guiding us, saying, hey, this is kind of what we're designing, what we're seeing now, what resonates with you guys, knowing that you guys are in financial services. So maybe not everything might be, apples to apples, and you might have to, have a little bit more privacy here and there, but it was their ability to tell the story of what the future of offices looked like, as opposed to us saying, hey, this is what we want, because we didn't know what we wanted. We just knew that we wanted something better than what we had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that you might be not giving yourselves enough credit, because one of the things that we really did take away from those initial strategic intent meetings was that the thing that would bring people back for their organization, bring them to the office, was people. So our whole goal was, in designing the space, was making sure that you see energy everywhere you look. So immediately upon entering, you see people interacting. In the office area, we freed up space so that you could see people interacting. So it's all about this accessibility, and that came directly from the client. And I should say that, I'm up here on this panel, but Jen McCord from my team, my partner, is really responsible for the success of the project. And so I just want to make sure that we call her out.
In case she's listening. And how has I'll get back to you in 1 second for the reveal of how your employees love it. But Sarah, you tell me what you hear people are asking for in the real estate leasing. Yeah, what are they asking for? What do they want? And what have you found? I know we talked about the study you did with some lawyers.
Mm-hmm. So the number one question we're getting is, how do I bring my people back? So you're looking at location, you're looking at building quality, and then you're kind of looking at, okay, what size is my office going to be and what buildings can accommodate that? So starting with location, 7 out of 10 companies in Chicago right now that are looking for office space are looking along Wacker Drive, which is what we call the West Loop. Sometimes West Loop and Fulton Market get a little bit intertwined, but Wacker Drive is West Loop, and that's where everyone wants to be. Because of the L access, because of the proximity to the 2 metro trains going, accessing north and west of the city. People want easy commutes. The second, another important thing is, what size should my office be? If I'm having 20 people come in every day, I can't be in a huge space and then it feels empty. So what we do at JLL is a lot of surveying around people. We do a lot of badge reader data, although that's never 100% either, but it takes like a really dedicated client team to kind of get everything right. A lot of different people working together, HR, CEO, C-suite, to kind of help figure that out. And then, the shrinking of the offices and how do you get people engaged 3 days is this is the question. And I feel like Eva's been doing a lot of that. She was kind of talking about how to keep people engaged when they come in and have a good experience, from offering umbrellas to coffee to other spaces that they can go in the building to help get people back.
I agree. I think, it was said earlier that people is essentially what's driving everyone else to come in. So at Cresset Capital, which, just to give a little context, Cresset is it's an award-winning multifamily office serving ultra-high net worth families and individuals with a variety of financial planning needs. And so our headquarters are here in Chicago. We were founded in 2017, and we've noticed that obviously Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the days that most people are coming in. And so whenever there are client meetings or our founders or members of our leadership team are in office, it is driving an incredible amount of traffic into our space. So that is what we're noticing as well, of what is driving traffic in.
So Paul, you have people coming in roughly 4 days a week, you said?
So yeah, if you talk to our CEO, because we were talking about before, Sarah had mentioned, it's 3 days is kind of like the norm. Our CEO would gasp if he heard that. He's from Indiana, so COVID hit a little bit different there. But I would say we're trying to get people in Monday through Thursday. Most people work from home either Fridays or Mondays, but 4 days a week is what we're aiming for. There's no magic wand that's gonna force that. I think you have to be as respectful as possible to your employees and to in our case we have advisors who aren't technically employees, but they can run their own business. What we found is that our most successful tenured financial advisors really just do whatever they want. We can't tell them when to come in. If they want to take a month off, they're taking a month off. But our standard W-2 employees, it's typically dependent upon their seniority. It's 3 or 4 days a week. And I think from a design standpoint of what we try to do is, again, totally different than what we had before with such assigned spaces, larger offices. Really every single person now, doesn't matter what size of business you bring to our firm, everyone's got the same standard size office. The days of the mega CEO or partner office, it's just dead space. So everyone's got their standard space, a lot more hoteling with cubicles, so people can reserve a desk, not necessarily have an assigned space. We have storage lockers for people that are hoteling now. So we're trying to make it easier for people to come in. Sarah mentioned, being on Whackers was really important to us because of the metro train stations. If we were not on Whacker or near public transportation, it'd be so much harder to get people in. They just probably wouldn't come in, to be honest. So that was an absolute must, was public transportation.
And, sorry, just went out of my head. What was I going to say?
Well, it's amazing what's happening on Whacker Drive, because you read the articles, doom and gloom of the office. Chicago vacancy is the highest ever, which yes, it is the highest ever. And that's primarily in Class B and C buildings, which are not on Whacker Drive. So Whacker Drive right now is one of the lowest vacancies ever. We're at like 7%, normal market is 12%. And then when we apply all the companies that are kind of looking from LaSalle Street, et cetera, to move west to Whacker Drive, we're at 3% vacancy, which is crazy. There's also no new building going on in Chicago. All the cranes you see are for apartment towers. So one development got out of the ground last year, and it's in Fulton Market. And the only reason they were able to get out of the ground was because they were 40% pre-leased. So you kind of add this crazy flight to quality. People are shrinking their space, yes, but they want to be in, buildings that are 10 years older and 10 years and newer sort of thing. And, that's a limited amount of supply. So it's going to be interesting the next 5 years to see what's going to be going on with rates and how people are going to be adjusting to, space the good space being leased is really the story.
Yeah, can you explain to those that don't know what an A, B, C?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So BMO Tower, where Bar Mar is, and the glassy new buildings on Whacker Drive are considered trophy and A buildings. And then the 2000s is kind of now becoming like a B and C building. It's basically just how many amenities a building has, how big the windows are, how new the building is. Because air quality is important. As Paul mentioned, light is important. So people are moving to newer buildings that have bigger windows, fresher amenities, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I remember I was going to ask you, Paul, do you think that young people have a different expectation than older people? And, when you talk about hoteling and that sort of thing, is there a clash happening?
Yeah, again, that's so hard to answer. I just know, so I'm 42 years old. I think about people graduating now, they're 20 years younger than me, they're 22. And it's kind of what you read in the news, that the expectation, they don't know the pre-COVID world, right? All they know is technology. They know that some of their classes were Zoom. They know that maybe mom and dad aren't going to the office as much. So the expectations and what reality is as we recruit new talent out of college to our firm is just different. We're still trying to navigate, is it us educating them on, well, this is kind of what the expectation is? Is it us training them differently? It's a combination of a lot of things. We are definitely nervous as a firm about what the new talent expects. And as we make investments in the future, that will definitely impact how we do make investments in office space. But there's no doubt that I think it's to be determined of what the new and future graduating classes will expect out of office spaces. Hopefully they do appreciate human interaction and do appreciate being around people and sharing best practices, not only on Zoom, but time will tell.
Yeah. And I think too that you have to be very, very flexible because of what you've just said. We don't know how many of these trends are going to stick. And although I think we think that a lot of it is here to stay, but flexibility seems key. And Jason, can you talk, are there products? And I know that I've been in some showrooms and I've seen things where, you can move a wall, you can, turn a solid pane of glass, easily into a solid wall.
Yeah, I think that we can't only be talking about flexibility. We have to be talking about environments that not only accept change but encourage change, because what we know is that we don't know what's coming. So as much as we can kind of build in that modularity, the things that can easily be moved and changed and shifted, the switch film, those kinds of technological innovations kind of make for a much more agile environment. But I think for us, kind of really thinking about building blocks and modularity and things that if they can't be easily moved, they at least have a lower lead time or a lower mess factor, so that you can maybe take 2 offices and turn them into a meeting room over a weekend and move on from there.
Mm-hmm. So what are the elements we're talking about? Paul touched on some, but what are the elements that a good modern office should have? Anybody?
Sure. So I think about a report that I recently read on office trends in 2024, and it sounds like what's here to stay is the dynamic office workspace. So, for example, at Cresset, we have a room we call the family room, and it is so flexible in that we can bring in tables and chairs and switch it out so that it's set up with like a couch with pillows and an area rug, so it's much more warm and comfortable. We can host, we can bring everything out and put in high boys and make it into like a cocktail space. It's so dynamic and you can use it in so many different ways. And I think thinking about how we're bringing our workforce back into the office, it's making them feel like there's flexibility, there's something new happening this week. It's different from what you experienced last week. So making the office as dynamic as possible, I think, is here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been thinking about, we've been doing a lot of research on brain health at HKS because, a lot of the trends that we talk about are not new, right? They've been around almost as long as Jason and I have been practicing.
Not
a long
that
time.
long.
It's my youthful countenance. But they're a trend because they were the solution to yesterday's problem. And I think something that, as an industry and as a creative, ownership of design and products and experience, as the last talk was about, we need to take more accountability for the broadest definition of flexibility. And something that we've been learning relative to our brain health is I think we're in this time of incredible individuality. If we think about the workplace, it was largely designed based on the first or second industrial revolution. It was designed on repetitive process, the same thing every day at a workstation. I'm totally going to get kicked out of here, by the way. There's going to yank me out. I know this. I can see it happening. But that was great when we were doing the same thing every day. And what we're doing now, and what we're going to have to do more of in the future, and what the potential of humanity is in the fourth industrial revolution, is really about making decisions and about being creative. And that is not a repetitive process that can be done in one single place. So I think when we think about flexibility, it's not only the spaces and the places, it's the policies, it's the technology, it's the agency and the training and the upskilling as individuals to not let our amazing predictive machine brain tell us we must do our work at a workstation. Our research suggests that 6 out of 10 people, they're dissatisfied with the lack of control they have at their workplace. They're multitasking. 43% of people are multitasking at their workstation. If you think about it, that got worse during COVID, right? You're collaborating on Zoom. You're learning stuff over, virtual learning things. We all learned how to use Teams over COVID, right? I think they introduced like 10 new softwares in those first 3 months. We're trying to do our focus work. We're trying to do so much in this one space, and it was never designed to do anything well. And what happens when you multitask in one space, 43% of people are experiencing less effectiveness cognitively and higher rates of burnout. So it's not just flexibility in terms of provide different. It's really understanding what are the affordances that are going to help people enhance their cognitive function, because we've got a global mental health crisis. We've got an aging population that's going to be working longer. How do we make sure everybody's brain is in the best possible shape to do the work? I think that's the other piece of flexibility we need to talk about.
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating. And how do you translate that to design at an architecture firm? How do you bring that?
Architects are as flexible as lawyers or engineers. So it's been a real go of it. I embraced my natural hair color at exactly the right time. I do lead our real estate internally with our CFO as our executive sponsor. And one thing that we've looked at is exactly something Sarah was talking about. Pre-pandemic, occupancy for professional services firms was hovering around 60%, as low as 40%. So we know that's a pre-pandemic norm, right? When everyone was required to be in the office 5 days a week, 8:30 to 5:30, right? It was still only that.
Yeah, that's fast. I had no idea that was
it's
right.
low.
Yeah.
It's low, right? And so
puts these numbers in perspective.
if you think about it, one thing we're looking at with our clients and ourselves is really saying, don't program for 100% of your population, because you're just going to be disappointed. You're going to be disappointed on the core days, and you're going to be really disappointed on Mondays and Fridays, right? Program for that pre-pandemic norm of occupancy, 40 to 60% of your population, depending on what you do and what your business goals are, right? So that when the space is fully activated, it feels full. One of the things we've learned in our brain health research is people are coming back to the office for connectedness to people and purpose. And so you have to make the space transparent, like you mentioned about West Point. You have to make it activated and dynamic. You have to see people when you go in there. So these mausoleums of space dedicated to 100% of occupancy are never going to fulfill what we need now. So it's really about understanding what affordances can you provide in your office that'll help with focus, that'll help with collaboration, that'll help with respite, that'll help with connectedness. And then how do you help people be flexible around designing their time and their intention? That, I think, is the next hurdle. People need to design their time. Don't think about where you do it. Think about what you're trying to do and then go to the right place to do it. We all did that in college, right? What do you do in your dorm room versus where do you go to the library or office hours or the commons or whatever? Why don't we do that in the workplace? And I think to Paul's point, that's the potential of the people coming out. It's not our responsibility to mold these people into pre-pandemic norms of work and office. It's our job to learn from the extreme collaboration that is the norm for them and extreme reliance on technology, and say, what is the office, what does the space and the policy and the technology need to do to respond to that? That's the potential, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working with a few law firms right now, and JLL did a whole survey of just our law firm clients, 40 big companies just in the Midwest, and they asked the attorneys, what do you guys want? What is the most important thing to you? And we were all like, oh, they're all going to say bigger offices. The number one thing they wanted was to feel a part of something. That's it. That was kind of our first indication of, wow, the office space is important. For all of these people, they just want to feel a part of something. Like, these people have been working for 30, 40, 50 years, and they just want to come into the office, feel proud of the name on the door, have fun with their coworkers when they're in. And their work has changed too, right? There's a lot of Zoom depositions now, and it's the traditional exterior private offices and the dark wood isn't working for them anymore. So how do we, as a team, figure out what's kind of the next edition of that? Are we doing Zoom rooms at our legal clients' offices? Yes, it's completely different than it was before.
Yeah, so I think that what Sarah brings up is how do we make the office into a community worth belonging to? And that's a design challenge. That's not a policy that you can put in place. That's not an amenity. That's a design challenge. And so does design matter? Absolutely, 100%. Because if we can make the office into a community worth belonging to, then that's going to be the thing that brings people back.
And a singular experience that you can't replicate at home or over technology. Like, you're getting, it's worth it. It's the worth it workplace.
Yep, the worth it workplace. I like it.
Yeah.
Trademark pending.
Should have called it that, yes. So what do you think, Paul? I mean, are you, I know you seem to be bridling just a little bit.
The thing that's coming to my mind right now is everything that the experts are saying right here is exactly what we are not. And it's a telltale sign of the future that decision makers of who's signing the lease, that business, that corporation, that law firm, that financial firm, they're not experts. I can't say anything that anyone here just said. And I think the future is going to be so much more dependent on the firms and the offices actually taking the advice of the professionals in the old school mentality of, I know it all and I can figure this out, I can run this office. Like, those days are over. Like, you have to really understand the mental health of employees, like the sunlight, all the amenities. It's so much above the head of the person who's running the office.
Yeah.
So it's like all the experts and all the details of every single aspect of the decision-making process of what the office should be takes a lot of people to figure that out. That's been my eye-opening experience through all this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
One thing also that we've seen is that, and I think somebody brought it up in the last session about experience, and we work with clients all the time to standardize things, right? To kind of provide, guardrails for how you procure things. That's still incredibly important. But what it does is it suggests that every single location is going to be the same. And what we found with our clients and with ourselves is there are cultural norms that vary wildly that influence how an office is used, how an HKS office is used in Salt Lake City versus Chicago. It's dependent upon commute, it's dependent upon the family structure, it's dependent upon culture, and we're the same organization. So I think this idea of one size fits all and some old school thinking around the purpose of the office, it doesn't leave room for that location specificity. And I think that's really going to change, the urban core and change and help the idea of the worth at workplace in the community, because it's different in every city, every town.
Eva, you can speak to that because you have offices in many parts of the country. And how many people here are from Chicago? Okay, decent amount, but you have people from all over, so.
Yeah, so Cresset was founded in 2017. Part of their growth strategy was to acquire smaller firms. So I joined Cresset in 2017, just under 7 years now. And so I've been part of this growth journey and a lot of change. But we've acquired up to 15 firms, 15 different teams in that time. And I will say that it's been a little bit of a challenge in terms of just bringing everyone together. I think what helps is that our firm and all these other firms that we're partnering with, at the core of how they want to deliver an experience to a client is that the client comes first. Everything is centered around the client. Obviously, employee experience is very important, but the client is really what comes first. And so when we're thinking about merging different cultures and offices, visions of different founders, it's all coming back to the client. So part of my job leading client experience and our national office experience strategy is really kind of meeting the guest or the visitor where they're at in terms of office hospitality. So I'll give an example. We know that women tend to run colder compared to men in an office setting. I mean, I'm always freezing. My husband's here, and we're always battling with the temperature of our house because he's always hot and I'm always running cold. So whenever we have a female visitor coming to our space, we try to accommodate. We raise the temperature in the meeting room so that it's the warmest possible. We lower the shades so that the sun isn't triggering the air conditioner to blast the entire meeting. We even have branded pashminas on site so that if they get cold, have a pashmina. It's beautiful, it's warm, it's yours. So I think meeting them where they're at makes a huge difference in their experience.
And we've seen that even in the office world. So, office buildings now are taking general managers from the hotels around here. So one of our favorite office buildings in the city has the GM of the Langham, who is now operating the office building. And that's where those little touches come in. Yeah. So when you have a client come in, someone can greet them in the lobby of the building. The experience starts outside the doors of the building instead of, the doors of your space, really. And everything from having branded waters to someone meeting you in the parking garage. Speaking of women coming in, if they're leaving at 8 p.m., they'll have a bellman come meet them on your floor and walk you down to the parking garage. Just the little things that are, when you're coming into the office, make a difference.
Totally agree.
Concierge.
Full-on concierge.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering what, pandemic aside, which obviously is a huge driver, even though, as you said, many of these things were starting to happen before. How does a low unemployment rate affect companies' desires to make their employees happy, basically, to have better retention and to attract talent? Is that a factor, you think?
I think it's actually interesting, this idea that, and I've heard it, maybe some of you guys have heard it, that all we need is a real good recession to get people back in the office. And it's like, that thinking is so flawed because the birth rate has been declining and declined even more significantly during COVID. So that's this idea of people having to work longer, because we're not, there's some crazy statistic out there, and I'm a little off my union card here, but for every 7 or 8 people leaving the construction industry, only 1 or 2 new are entering. So this idea that a good recession is going to get people back to the office is flawed. So not only do you want to think about keeping people, but we're talking a lot about, with our brain health research, amenitize making people better instead of offering them pizza or a golf simulator. Amenitize service, amenitize experience that they can't get at home. Take care of them, and it won't matter what the unemployment rate is or whether or not we're in a recession. I mean, this fight for talent is not going to go away with our economic circumstances. It's only going to get worse. You're welcome.
It is so funny, the little things that matter. We have clients surveying hundreds and hundreds of people, every year, and oftentimes what comes up as one of the most important things for employees working in office space is the dang coffee. They want something better than the Keurig that they can get at home. So it's the little things of how do we have this fancy machine? Okay, maybe it's $1,000 more a month or whatever it is, but a relatively inexpensive item when you're talking, 300 people in an office, that encourages them to get back and have like a nice little morning around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not ping pong tables and rooftop decks.
No, well, we're lucky in Chicago because a lot of buildings already have that. So now it's like, how do we focus on the inside of our spaces? It's really fun to tour all of the, the golf amenity, but realistically, people are not really using that every day. So it's fun to see, but what matters more is what's inside the space, your own space.
Mm-hmm. So any more about what's inside the space, Jason?
Sure.
Love to, I mean, are there elements that you try to design into every space?
Well, we've been talking for years about the correlation between choice and workplace satisfaction, and we've been saying that well before COVID, but it's even more relevant now. Since the hybrid work environment kind of starts to take away people's personalized space, so no more dedicated offices, no more dedicated workstations. So we have to let people personalize their experience, and we do that by giving them choice throughout the workplace on where they work most effectively for the different tasks. I think Kate was saying earlier about we did it when we were in college, why can't we do it at work? I think before COVID, the value of a workplace was measured in density and attendance. and now we're really looking at it through a human lens. Thankfully, and I think that kind of leads us to different kinds of choices. So it's not just about reducing square footage, it's actually about providing lots and lots of different kinds of spaces. So it's not about scarcity, it's about abundance.
So what kinds of spaces? I mean, are we talking like phone booth type places for a private call?
I was gonna say, I might be able to add a little bit about what we had previously and now. So again, our old office literally only had 3 conference rooms, and then every other space was either office or cubicle. So it went from that to, when you enter our office, we have 5 or 6 conference rooms. We have a client experience space, which we're still trying to figure that out, because if clients physically don't come to our space, what does that mean for that space that we designed? Because we assumed post-COVID world, clients would be coming back, but we're still trying to, again, navigate if they will come back at the rate they did before. So we have that whole designated area, and then we have, we use something now called micro offices on the interior space of our office, and then we have our exterior window offices, which now have all glass so that all the sunlight can come through. We have 3 collaboration spaces that our employees and advisors can go to and like share best practices, share ideas. Before, if you wanted to do that, you had to run out a conference room. One of those spaces has couches and it almost feels like a living room. We have an advisor and employee lounge that's a full kitchen, really nice island that probably seats 10 people. Filtered water, coffee makers, everything done to the nines. So it was really just kind of thinking about, okay, if we're okay with our team working from home, how do we make the office feel more like home so they feel more comfortable coming to the office? So, I mean, just completely night and day compared to what we had. I mean, again, before it was 3 defined spaces, no wiggle room, take it or leave it, and now there's way more, as you kind of mentioned, like choice. I mean, you have a choice now, how and where do you want to operate within the office space, which is nice.
And like, a giant conference room for 2 people having a chat is just weird, right?
Right.
Yeah. What was the reaction? I mean, when you first the ribbon cutting and have everyone come back, they must have been, and some older people who lost their offices
Yep.
annoyed?
You know, there's two people I'm thinking about that, you know, were very senior that when they realized they actually did have maybe like an inch more of a bigger space, we had to sell it that way. But I mean, they used to have big offices, and now they literally had the same size office as anyone. And so once they realized though that's for everybody, including the CEO, like there was no question, like because we led it from the top. So that wasn't an issue. I think it was more of just, again, when we made that move last fall, it was a question of what excitement's going to bring me back, because I know what we had before, and you're promising this whole new excitement going forward. Until I see it with my own eyes, I don't know what to expect. So I think once they saw it, the excitement was there. They saw the amenities of the space. I can't remember, I think, Sarah, you mentioned about how, you know, our building, our general manager of our building at CME was at the Peninsula, and just the vibes that he brings to the lobby. I mean, when you walk into our lobby space, like it actually smells nice. Like there's an aroma that I don't even know what he puts in the air vents, but it just smells good. And there's always like really good music in the lobby. Like there's a vibe right when you walk in, you get some type of like energy. I was never, and I think this is most people in our office, never excited about going to our former space. There's nothing exciting about it. I mean, maybe it's the honeymoon phase still, but like I'm still, when I get on the train every morning from the western suburbs and come downtown, I'm actually like excited. There's an excitement that comes.
You have little kids at home, don't you?
I do have 2 young kids. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I actually go to the office 7 days a week. I'm actually working more now. But there definitely is an excitement. There's like a jittery moment where you're like, okay, everything's clean, it's brand new, and it's just open. It's just a different vibe. It's hard to describe until you see it, and maybe it's because of how bad our space used to be.
The improvement. Are the spaces working the way you thought they would?
There's only one curveball, and that curveball we were talking about earlier is, while the advisors come back and the staff comes back, we just don't know if the clients are going to come back. We're a little bit different than Eva's firm, where they're dealing strictly with ultra high net worth. I mean, we have clients who are cops and firemen. We have 280,000 clients. I mean, we have a ton of clients that, going from, you know, someone just out of college that's working with us to someone that's worth, you know, $10, $20 million, doesn't matter. Big spectrum. We're finding, and Sarah and I were kind of joking about this. I mean, someone could be 3 blocks from our office and want to Zoom. Like they don't want to come in. So we're trying to figure out, we have this amazing client lounge that we built, and we're trying to figure out, are we going to keep it that way? If they don't come back, is that going to be dead space, or do we just make that another, you know, staff and advisor lounge area? That's the one space that time will tell. We just don't know exactly, will the clients come back at the level they did before.
Do people use it now at all? Or
They do, yeah. I mean, it's become now, people grab lunch over there, so it's still being used. It's just not kind of what we thought it was going to be used for. We thought way more people, way more clients would be coming back, and we just haven't seen that yet.
We're also finding that, you know, programming is so important. So like in the example you mentioned, you know, our offices, I think back, my elementary school was fairly rural, and I don't know if it was a money issue or what it was, but our gym was also our cafeteria, which is also our auditorium. It was an auto-cafnasium. And, you know, we're thinking about our offices and our social spaces in our offices and saying, okay, we might not have people in here on Mondays and Fridays, not really Tuesday through Thursday, but either what are we going to do to even ratchet up the engagement on Tuesday through Thursday, or how are we going to invite the community into our space on Mondays and Fridays? So what kind of things are we hosting for the industry to be a good part of the community at large beyond our space? What are we hosting for the universities we want to recruit from? Our Atlanta office moved into less space. They've grown significantly since they moved in. Their engagement scores have gone up, and they're hosting more things for the universities and the industry and the design community than they ever hosted before. Our Mexico City office is the same. They've got 900 new client contacts based on how they are programming their space and inviting people into their space. So where we've seen maybe the client interaction drop off, we've said, okay, well, how can we offset that with the community interaction and make this space worthwhile for ourselves? The auto-cafnasium model.
Is that a new position for someone at these
Auto
companies?
caphnasium concierge.
Yes, exactly.
Just really rolls off the tongue.
Sign me up.
We actually think that even more to Sarah's point that, what we would like to see, what we think is part of the future of work is buildings not offering containment, but offering service. Just-in-time amenities, and all kinds of things that have to change over quickly, so it makes sense for the building to own it and change it every 1 to 3 years. Think about sports venues turnover, like the F&B turnover is short, but offices go 10, 15, 20 years without ever refreshing or changing. I think those days are over.
Those days
based
are
on
over.
Technology alone.
100%. Gone are the days of the 10-year, 15-year leases. We're signing 3, 5, 7-year leases, 10 or 12 if you're kind of anchoring a building or if you're over 100,000 square feet. But yeah, things change so quickly, and we're finally in a world where we're appreciating that and we're able to be more agile and make those changes and care about the office. And to Paul, your point, you're going to get a whole other chance to kind of redo that space every 5 years, but now you can figure out how to be more efficient in it and like what's working. And even where something in Indy is different than what's in Chicago, people are taking that into a more account now and putting kind of more care into design and choice around that, which is really fun to see.
But if you're looking at shorter term leases and you're looking at changing things over, does that mean that you're not investing as much in, is the quality and durability of furniture and stuff
still
changing?
There, 100%. It's when you sign a lease, you get a pile of money, right? And you get a pile of like free rent. And the longer term you sign, the more you get. However, if you sign a 20-year lease and your outlay is $20 million versus if you sign a 10-year lease, your outlay is $10 million and your out-of-pocket is $300,000, it's not worth the extra 10 years on your lease for that $10 million out-of-pocket for something that's, $300,000 over the next 10 years. Does that kind of make sense? It's the amount of rent that you're spending on a 20-year, 15-year lease is so much more than kind of the today out of pocket than what you're spending on furniture or changing out your office or looking at the 3 offices that aren't working and changing them to workstations and vice versa. But I think you really need people on your team that are integrated in the office and understanding how people are using it to make it right. So like Eva, I think that you bring a cool perspective because you're so in the detail of it.
Right.
You can really be a voice for like how to make office engagement, how to increase it and bring more people in.
Well, and I was just thinking about Paul's comment about, how are we getting clients back into the space? 2 things come up for me, which applies to employees as well in a lot of ways, is how easy are we making it for them? So for clients who are traveling outside of the city, who don't come downtown on a daily basis, could be overwhelmed by the parking options, traffic, how long it's going to take them to get to the space. So how easy are we making it for them to get to our space if they have a meeting? The second is kind of what's in it for them. Like what does it benefit them? We're seeing a lot more prospective clients come into our space for that initial meeting. And then there's a little bit of a drop off once they do become a client because they've seen the space, they've met the team in person, they're aware now of what the presence that Cresset has in the space. So I think those 2 things are what come up for me in terms of like how are we getting people in. So.
Do you advertise the pashmina or no? Is that like, come in, get a free pashmina?
We should.
Look under your chairs. No.
You get a car, and you get a pashmina, and you get a car. I'd like to open up to questions unless there's something one of you guys were burning to say. So, and they're helpful people with microphones. So, anybody have a question for us? Yes, there's somebody back there. Nope.
I think you only covered 4 of the 5 trends, and I wanted to just see if you would go over that list real quick again.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I think you only did 4 of the 5 trends, and I wanted to see if you would say that list again.
Oh, goodness, sorry about that.
Mental health, choice, mobility,
Ability, hybrids here to stay,
hybrids here to stay.
Privacy?
Privacy.
privacy. Thank you, guys. Anybody else? There was somebody back there with, I can sort of see.
I just wanted to understand more amenities. What other amenities besides coffee?
In individual spaces or in the building? In the building. So a really cool new amenity that we're seeing is, wellness rooms for new moms. So private spaces for moms, all your equipment, if you're pumping, is there. It's really, really spectacular. It's not a part of your space. You're gonna have to go to a different floor. But you can book on your phone easily through apps. There's mental health rooms, so a lot of rooms to take therapy calls during the day, which are also booked from like a different proprietary app. So no one in the building is kind of tracking you through that. Your office managers aren't tracking you either. We're seeing a lot of amenities towards private spaces, where I think the past 10 years of amenities has been kind of more towards public spaces, the ping pong tables, the golf simulator, the big conference room sort of thing. Now it's getting a little bit smaller and more focused on the individual.
And Sarah, I think you said before we started that, one of the things, I know at Crain's, we would have people in the beginning were only coming in like Wednesday, Thursday. And lo and behold, those were always the days that people had a doctor appointment or, a furniture delivery or something like this. So you were saying that, the private rooms to take an appointment, a telehealth or whatever, just takes away another reason that people don't.
Exactly. We have, everyone knows you can get your flu shots at your office space now, but there's dental hygienists coming in. There's puppy petting parties, you guys, where they bring like all the puppies to your building and a whole day for adoption and petting them and all the, fun things with that. Yeah. Those are the main ones that we're seeing.
Well, sorry, anybody else? Yes.
Thank you. My question has to do with, can you tell more about how to survey employees about what they want? Because the concern, of course, is you ask, I don't know, is it me or, okay, is if you ask for a free-for-all, that's not manageable. So how do you manage expectations and yet ask for what will be a decent workplace, something that will engage and create the community space you mentioned?
We just had our survey.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about it.
And I'm sure you guys do a bunch of surveys as well. So we do surveys to gather information on what's important to that individual office. So what Chicago wants is different than what Indy wants versus different than what San Francisco wants. We have like 300 questions that are kind of all categorized by health and wellness, privacy spaces, your own work desk, et cetera. So depending on what you want to understand about your workforce, our team works with you to help figure out the 15 questions that we're gonna ask. Paul, from an experience perspective, his company just took it, and it was a few-minute survey, because you don't want to lose people if it's too long. You want to provide just kind of the right amount of space to really understand what you need and not leave too much room for venting.
Yeah, we did our downtown office space, our suburban Lisle office space, and then Indianapolis, just because their lease is coming up soon. And really it was to take a look at our Chicago and Lisle, our two brand new spaces, so to get an idea, okay, what worked, what didn't work. And then for Indianapolis, it's for us to understand what's important to them as we pick out the new lease. From a decision-making standpoint, I think it's just working with Sarah's team and the people that put the survey together to help us identify what are the key common talking points that we need to take seriously, because obviously there's gonna be a ton of comments and you can't make every single person happy. So we know that's not possible, but we also want to make sure that we're identifying the common comments that we're hearing that definitely we need to address, because if more than one person's saying something negative or that they want to see improvement on, you can't avoid that.
Can I ask you if you allow employees to work at either office, Lisle or Chicago?
We do, yeah. So absolutely, yes. So people do have, in our industry, you have to have like an assigned mailbox where your correspondence is coming in for investments or your insurance practice. But you know, for instance, myself, like I can go to, I live in the western suburbs, I can go to our Lyle office whenever I want and get a space, which is why the hoteling system works really nice, because then not every single person has an assigned space, so there's nowhere to work from. So it makes it a lot easier to rent a space for the day.
I'll say too that the survey that we typically use is it's based on long-standing external vetted models that look at culture, that look at value networks in an organization. So we're not asking, where do you like to do your work? Or, you know, we're asking real questions about how you're working, how the work gets done, who are you talking to? And when we can do that, when we can deploy that survey in combination with leadership alignment, because frequently there's not consensus amongst the leadership, the stakeholders, the business unit leaders of an organization about what it should be. So we can hear their perspective on it. We can get them, we can facilitate them talking to each other about their vision for the future. And then we could bring in that voice for the employees to say, this is actually what's happening today. You may perceive this is what's going on. This is actually what's going on. Do you want to solve for that? What are the insights? What are the ways we can focus allocation of space or investment of dollars to achieve a certain experience? So there's definitely an art and science to how you ask the questions and what you're trying to find out.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Thank you. When we talk about that attendance rate that's really hitting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, what we always struggle with, and I'm sure lots of people here are, because people are coming in to work together with teams, and so finding when you hit those high density periods, how do you get to your core people to be able to work together in those team environments? You know, getting them to be able to sit together. How do you, that hoteling management of collaborative spaces, you know? That's our biggest struggle, is that people, when they come into the office, want to work together with the teams that they need to work with that day. And because we don't have a one-to-one relationship of people to desks, how we manage that. And I'm always interested to hear how people are problem solving for that one.
Good one, yeah.
I think if I understand correctly, I mean, so in our office, on a day that's slammed, and ironically Mondays are one of our busiest offices because two of our teams come together, and most of our cubes at that point are taken up. But because we have 3 collaborative areas, not only the 5 conference rooms up front, but the 3 more in the back, I mean, we see that's where that space gets leveraged the most. So going back to my original point, if we were pre-COVID office, we wouldn't be able to operate like we do today. The office space was just so obsolete. It would have been an issue where if everyone was in, there would not have been enough space. So that's why those 2 or 3 conference rooms that we had before, and that's all we had, it didn't make any sense for the new world. So by us having way more spaces to actually pivot to and actually share with a group of 3, 4, or 5, even if every cube's taken, there has not, knock on wood, been an issue. If there would be an issue, that'd be a good thing because there'd be even more people in the office, but it hasn't been an issue up to this point. But you got to have those spaces in order for it to even work.
We have a client who not only are all the conference rooms and offices schedulable, but all of the workstations also have a scheduling device on it. So teams can schedule a block of workstations so that they can all be together on the days that they're in.
Yeah, all of our conference rooms and collab spaces all have an app to assign. But that's a whole other issue if someone goes in there and they're not assigned to it. That's like World War III.
We've seen clients just changing the furniture situations in those rooms. You know, even in a kitchen, adding like a high top that has 6 seats and kind of calling it something new, so people feel like it's a new place to meet. Because we run into the same issue at our office at JLL. We don't have enough like kind of fun collaborative spaces to meet. So we've removed some workstations, added in like circular tables. So it's not necessarily private meeting room space, but it's more touchdown areas for people to, you know, sit face to face. Sometimes we'll add a rolling TV.
I think I may have misspoke, because what it is when people are in the office,
I think, are you saying you want that, they want to sit by in a workstation with,
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like they want to be together, you know, it's not teaming moments or periods of time. It's proximity to collaborators throughout the duration of the day. I call it groundhogging. When
Yeah.
you're stand up and you're like, oh, what were you able to like get that together? Or,
right,
you know?
real casual, yeah. And I think, well, Jason said that at one of his offices that you can reserve workspaces. So that group could reserve it all together.
Right.
We have the tools, it's just it's beyond just like having the ability to do it.
Right.
Yeah,
How do you actually implement it
right.
and kind of shut things down so that only certain people, it becomes, you know, it's
Sure.
complex.
Yeah.
Well, is this a relatively new situation for your organization? Is it just a matter of kind of learning new habits and kind of figuring the system out so that it works for the teams?
We're certainly doing a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough.
It's still
Yeah,
a work in progress.
yeah. I think we don't have a clear answer for you because all of this is relatively new for everyone. So.
And I think it depends on as I was thinking about it, like, we have clients doing all kinds of things, and we ourselves are trying out all kinds of different things. And I think there's a little bit about this intentionality that I talked about before. So in our office here in Chicago, we're trying where we've blocked, no one's got an assigned seat, but we've blocked certain areas for certain teams. So this is the commercial interiors team has these 4 desks. So if they're full, there's spaces around them, or you guys get a room, or there's flexibility for the team to respond to the real-time issues that are happening that day without scheduling. But some of our other offices need that scheduling. So I think culturally, you also got to figure out what is the social contract. Our Atlanta office has been an interesting phenomenon where people were so used to going to a workstation and ground hogging, like you were saying, but then they saw other people coming in and there weren't quite enough desks or whatever. So they were like, oh, shoot, I don't actually need to be here. I don't actually just need this to be a home for my laptop all day. I could go sit somewhere else. I could sit in the lounge. So it's like helping people, leaving them room to figure that out and establish the culture is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate. We're getting the
Sorry.
sign, so we've gone over a little bit. Thank you so much. You've been great.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.